How are you guys doing today?
Good.
Before we get started, the only reason Collider gets to be at Toronto and cover the film festival is because of House of Aurora, which is where you're at. And I really want to thank them for being a great sponsor and partner and being able to do stuff here because it's really expensive to cover TIFF. In case you didn't know, right? You have the Facebook money, so making
all of it. We have
all of it. Yep.
Facebook money. In our pockets.
Right. So I got to see the first 4 episodes and really, really dug it. And if I had had access to the next 6, I would have immediately continued. So that's my, the best thing I can say. Talk a little bit about most people, everyone watching this won't have seen it yet. I'm going to air it right before it comes out. Right. Talk a little bit about what the show is about, and let's just start with that.
Sure. I think that's a me question because I created it and we all made it together. Sorry for Your Loss is about Lee, played by our Elizabeth Olsen, who is a young woman whose husband dies very unexpectedly. And it's very much about how she has to put the pieces of her life back together and figure out how she's going to survive and move forward in the face of this impossible thing.
I'm curious, when you go in to pitch the show to Facebook and you're going with it, I think a lot of people nowadays are looking for multiple seasons and, they're not thinking of it as like a one-off. It's very hard to do that. So when you have that initial pitch, are you sort of saying, hey, I have an idea for 3 years, or I have an idea for this? Or is it sort of do you know what I mean? What is that conversation like?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think typically now you do put together a document. It can be anywhere from, 5 pages to 50 pages. I've seen some pretty insane. I think Battlestar Galactica had an insane Bible that they came in with. But basically you are saying, this is what I see happening in the first season. This is what I see happening in future seasons, laying out not only individual stories, but real arcs and overall journeys. And look, I wrote this thing 4.5 years ago. I've had time to think about it and mull over who these people are and where they're going to go. So it feels like this all feels like when we went into Facebook, I'm like, well, I've studied for this test for 4 years. I am prepared to take it, prepared to turn in this final exam, as it were.
Sure. How did you two, because you're executive producing this, if I'm not mistaken, how did you guys first hook up?
Through Robin Schwartz, who's our executive producer with Big Beach. And she sent it over to me after reading Kit's script. And then I loved Lee. I loved the character. I also like playing people that are initially kind of hard to like because I like defending them and finding empathy. And I also thought that there was... this was like a little hole and a gap storytelling where you don't really have too many stories that are about an authentic expression of grief and loss. We have a lot of literature, so much literature. I think it actually, Robin even said it has its own.
Barnes & Noble, they have a grief memoir section, I believe. And
it's its own section.
Yeah.
But we don't talk about it. And it's not part of really too much film or television in a real struggling way. And so we hooked up and we did the pitches together, and we then we started assembling a team. We went to James. We knew we wanted him to come on as a director because we all loved how he films things being such a fly on the wall, and you just feel like you're inside the world with all the characters. And he has such a sensitivity about how he shoots his own films, and we were really lucky that it was this kismet connection also with the subject matter in such a deep way. But
well, talk a little bit about what was it about the story, and what was it about the story that appealed to you and said, I want to do this?
Yeah, it was the script, and I was a big fan of Lizzie's as well. But I was moved. That was the biggest thing, and I hadn't read anything before that dealt with sort of grief, trauma, and recovery, but that wasn't solely about death. It was about life. That was ultimately life-affirming and about sort of resiliency and the relationships that we sort of create as we try to move forward. And it reminded me in some ways, I'd done the first couple episodes of Master of None, and this sort of reminded me of that as well, where there was clearly a very heavy, just dark version of this that would be an hour long, but this in a half hour with humor took on issues in a way that I had just never seen before, that I felt like, that could open up, had the potential to make an audience go on a journey that they might not think they would go on, and do it with unexpected lightness and hopefulness.
Talk a little bit about how you actually got involved, and we'll start with that.
Sure. Yeah. I'd worked with James before, and I got an audition, standard audition.
Skype chemistry
Yeah.
read.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you really tell a chemistry read on Skype?
Pops off the
Yes.
screen.
Yes,
I was
for
like,
this one.
I don't know. No, that was pretty awesome. And then, we Skyped again when I was in Colorado. I had to find a room to Skype with my phone. It was really, really intense. But I just wanted to work with James again, and I read the script and I was like, it's great. And I've seen Lizzie's work all over, so I was a huge fan of hers. So I was like, I got to do this.
Well, one of the things about your character is that it's really one of the things I love when you can do an extended storyline is you can really explore a character and really go deep. And what I really enjoyed about your character is that you're dealing with depression and you're dealing with real life stuff, and it's, as you said, stuff that you generally don't see. No one portrays this stuff because it's tough and it's tough to talk about. So talk a little bit about getting to play a character like that with so many layers.
It was, this might sound strange, Stephen, but it was kind of a gift in a way, because I feel like I learned a lot about people in my own life, and became a lot more compassionate to their struggles, because I was just kind of oblivious before. But in the process of that, I also learned a lot about my own self and my own habits and my own, I should probably investigate this a little bit more, especially during episode 5. I was like, I do that too. Anyway,
I am curious about episode 5 because I have not seen it, and episode 4 ends on a little bit of what we call a cliffhanger.
All right.
Episode
It was a doozy.
Episode 5 is one of my favorite episodes.
Oh, you should have a mic.
Yeah,
then.
sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Episode 5 is one of my favorite episodes because it is a shift in perspective, and I think that is why we're releasing the first 4, because there is a big shift that happens. And I think the way Kit has unfolded and told the story about loss and grief and depression, it's the monotony of it, it's the stuff that's not fancy. It's not exaggerated. There's a mundane quality to depression. And there's just certain things that I love so much about actually getting to capture that, as opposed to making it super dramatic just for purpose of story. And I think it's a risk, and I really appreciate that specifically in episode 5, which you will see
Exactly.
whenever September 25th or something, or whatever it is.
Well, so you guys made this with Facebook, and this is one of their first releases, if not their first release.
Not their
One of,
first,
yeah.
one of, yeah.
One of.
I don't mean, why would I know anything? I'm not a
We've
reporter.
been prepped.
Right, exactly. Wait. So
I know the answer.
So-
I read a piece of paper.
did it say the do's and do nots on the piece of paper?
I don't think so.
Because-
I think it just I know that
I-
we're
That's proprietary information. I think we've got to keep a little bit close to the vest.
bad at that.
Well, I am curious though. What was it like working with them? Because they are they're a huge company, but this is they're pushing into original content, and I'm curious what was it like with the note-taking process and being a collaborator with Facebook.
It was awesome. They want to make the same show. They wanted to make the same show we wanted to make, and that's the most you can ask for in a home. Is they wanted us to be exactly the creature we were. They weren't trying to make us funnier. They weren't trying to make us soapier. They just wanted us to be the show that we were, and that was really validating and exciting. So their notes were, I think, very geared towards oftentimes clarity, making sure that we were always really staying true to the characters and really creating that wonderful illusion. I call it being a ghost in the room, where it doesn't feel like characters are espousing exposition for the audience's benefit, but really you just feel like you're spying on real people interacting in a way they really would. No, their notes were organic, germane. I loved them.
Talk a little bit about the editing process and I know you were very involved in that.
Yeah, I was like, well,
But
You went to the editing day, though.
I did go once actually.
He did. Mamoudou, there was one day where he like poked his head in to say goodbye, I'm leaving or something, and then you saw that we were editing an episode. You were on screen. You're like, oh, and I was like, come in, and you're like, I'll just stay a minute. I think
And
you
then-
stayed for like 2 hours.
Do I have
Was
the
it 2?
It was.
No, that was the
It
story
always
I
goes quick
heard.
when you're around.
Do I have the timeline right that Kelly found out, and then
Yes.
Kelly shortly thereafter was in the Bay?
Yeah.
I think we called them editing classes.
Yeah.
Did Giovanna ever come? Maybe
No, I don't think so.
a future date.
We did have two fantastic editors.
Great
Darren,
editors.
Darren Navarro, who I've worked with before, who also worked with William Friedkin and had worked on I Love Dick, and then Hilda Rasula, who'd worked on Transparent as well. So we had fantastic
What I'm
editors.
curious about, because ultimately the editing process is the final rewrite. So I'm curious, what did you learn in the editing room that maybe wasn't on the page? And did you do any sort of screenings for like friends and family? And did those screenings impact the finished product?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's, you inevitably have blind spots sometimes while you're making things, and I think, it was really great. I mean, the show goes sort of, there's past and present. You're sort of weaving those two in and out, and in some cases the scripts were great, but in some cases you're making minor rewrites. And then when we were showing the episodes, we would screen them 2 at a time for groups of friends, family, and we got incredible notes, and we also saw like that people were laughing in places or crying, and I don't know if you know.
Yeah, I was thinking of the pilot episode in particular. The flashbacks, I think, on the page, the plotting and the sequence of them made a lot of sense. But then once we got into our initial cuts, we were realizing that it was feeling a little murky, and so it really was. There was some restructuring, reordering. A little bit of ADR, a smidge of ADR. We were realizing, I was like, oh, wait, we never say this character's name. We probably should get that, at some point in the first episode. But that was, and again, that was Darren in episode 1, and then Darren did the odd episodes, Hilda did the even episodes. But they really presented us really wonderful cuts. I've been warned ahead of time, oof, don't take the first cut too personally. Don't get too worried. It all gets fixed. But they turned in really beautiful cuts. So I was like, this is amazing. I love these first cuts, and then we just made them better and better from there.
And as an actor, I've with Taylor Sheridan, he would show me an early edit, and then there was specifically a scene where I said, I remember something better. Can we please go back to whatever you guys left on the floor? And that's what was interesting about being a part of this process from a producer side, is I would see a take and I'd be like, now I'm gonna go watch dailies of this scene because I think that there is something else that I think we should use instead, and I'd submit my requests.
The advantage of being an executive producer.
Yeah, and for your own performance, which is really, which was weird. I mean, I feel like I've never watched myself more in my entire life, and it's a very weird feeling because you eventually feel nothing.
Question for you two. Often when I speak to actors, they talk about the toughest thing is figuring out the first thing about the character, or sort of you know what I mean, breaking in and figuring out the character. Talk a little bit about how the first thing you did to get ready and just preparing for these roles.
Oh, well, I don't know, Stephen. The thing that I usually like to go into is usually there's the full script, and then there's a history there. So I'm like, okay, this character says this about him, this character, blah, 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 blah. There's all these facts I can gather. Well, with this one, there was not a lot of facts.
One
Just,
script.
one script, and there are flashbacks and kind of out of order. I was like, wait, what else? So it kind of had a new approach to it, which was scary for me, but it also made me even more reliant on Lizzie. But thank God it's Lizzie, so it's easier than it would have been. I don't know. I just kind of relied on James and Lizzie to just kind of help me guide me to where I needed to be, because the scenes were beautifully written, but I was like, wait, where is this coming from? Who's this? Why is he? There's a reason for this, but I don't know what it is.
I remember telling you facts, and I was like, "Has anyone told you this?"
I'm like,
and you're
no.
like, "No," and I was like,
No.
"Well, we got to get a document for you, so you know who you are."
Yeah, I'm like, great. That'd be great.
For me, it was. I mean, the funny thing was, I'd read the script 3 summers ago, and we pitched for 6 months or something, and we developed it, and then we moved it around, and like so there I already felt very connected to her. But when it comes to the actual mentality and cyclical nature of how your mind obsesses over grief, we would always reference the Year of Magical Thinking, and I read it when we were not in prep at all, and then I would reread it while we were working and right before working, and I just think Joan Didion creates such a specific, vivid depiction of like what exactly was going through her head the moment she lost her husband, and the obsessive nature of holding on to memories and trying to remember every single detail so that person never dies in your memory as well as physically. And so that was just kind of like a nice insight for me.
Everyone has been coming in, including
There's
this
a fly
fly.
attacking you.
Exactly. Everyone has been coming in.
It's so how horrible.
Yeah. Quite aggressive.
Yeah, listen.
Sir, please, sir.
Everyone has been coming through the studio. We've been playing Get to Know Your TIFF Attendee. These are very harmless questions, I promise. We'll find out in 30 seconds. For you two, what TV show would you love to guest spot on? What TV show would you love to guest write? And what TV show would you love to guest direct?
What TV shows are there? I don't watch a lot of TV.
Fleabag second season.
Oh, that's well done.
I'd love to work with her.
Well done. Oh, I don't know, guys. What's good?
Game of Thrones.
No, I'm good.
Just follow your heart. You can like get creative. A show from yesteryear.
I don't
Cheers.
think I don't think he watches a lot of TV.
I really don't. The only thing that's coming to mind is Seinfeld. I'm gonna be so mad when I leave this interview and all these shows come back to
No,
my head.
well, they're rebooting everything. So when they do reboot Seinfeld, you can be
I can be the new Kramer.
a new Kramer.
First step for Kramer.
A second coming of Kramer.
Well, there's a lot of jokes. Okay, we'll leave that all the way alone.
Oh, the other thing I'd like to work on is I would love to be a part of Atlanta. I love that entire cast so much, and they're all short films basically to me, and I think they're just that to me was one of my favorite seasons I watched this year.
Season
for
2?
Sure. Oh,
It's
yeah.
it's incredible.
It's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I completely agree.
I'd like to retract my answer and say Atlanta.
No, it's mine. I gave you Game of Thrones.
Lizzie's already nabbed your spot. I love The Good Place with The Fire of a Thousand Suns, and so just to be a fly on the wall, I would be their writer's assistant. I would get them lunch if I could just like sit during the afternoon and listen to them scheme and dream. Yeah, I'm gonna go with that.
I would have said Atlanta, but they already said it, so I'll say Barry.
Oh,
You love Barry.
I do love Barry. I genuinely love Barry.
Does Bill Hader know how much you love Barry? Does Alex know how much you love
A little bit, yeah.
We have had so many long conversations while working about Barry.
I'm a big
James loves
fan.
it.
I was telling James how much I love Succession, and his response was, "But you haven't watched Barry yet."
And James like, just you wait when the Emmys come and Barry wins everything and you hadn't seen it.
I'm being subsidized by Barry.
right.
Yeah. That's
Understand.
why I'm at TIFF. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite sci-fi or fantasy film?
Oh boy. All right. Excuse me.
Now he's ready.
Actually, my favorite probably is Your Name. I think I've told all of you
Yeah.
guys.
Oh, no. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal.
It's the best.
Phenomenal.
It's the best, Stephen.
Yeah.
Never-ending story.
The never end. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
By the way, if you haven't seen Your Name, it really is incredible.
It's one of the best movies I've seen in a decade. Yeah, it's beautiful.
This is all. We're all
Yo,
answering this question?
definitely.
Well, Return to Oz terrified me as a child, and it
Oz.
still like terrifies me and fascinates me. I don't think I'll ever truly understand that film, and I like that feeling.
Did you see it when they premiered it, when they did the showing at Ace a
No.
few years ago?
How did I miss that?
Just
Oh
to see it.
no.
Just to watch that movie as an adult is beyond disturbing. And then as a child, you're kind of like, what did you think of that? Like being having the electric shock therapy on a little girl. What did you think of that as a
woman
child?
has 900 heads, and they're all
Yes.
hanging out in a shoe
They're
closet.
all
What do
women.
you think
Yeah,
about
what
that?
do you think about that?
What are your feelings?
The Return to Oz, it's brilliant. You should see it.
Children of Men or Solaris.
Okay. What film scared you as a kid besides Return to Oz?
The Dark Crystal. I feel like all the like weird Jim Henson stuff terrified me.
The Exorcist.
I loved horror movies as a kid. The thing that I remember being scared of was the beginning of Beethoven at the Pound.
That is not the answer.
But I loved scary movies as a kid. I loved being scared. Ernest Scared Stupid. I loved all the Ernest movies.
Have you gotten that answer yet?
No, nothing about what you
Fresh
said
Bulgarian
have I
beer.
gotten. This is all new stuff.
I need water. Beethoven.
Oh, also fantasy sci-fi. How about Mom and Dad Save the World? Anyone seen that?
No.
I saw
Olsen Family Special.
that. Right, no,
One of our favorites. Yeah, they're good.
Right. For each of you, do you collect anything?
Refrigerator magnets. I like putting stuff in my refrigerator, and that requires magnets. So I've got like 30, I think. It's a growing collection.
I've never been emotionally attached to
Objects?
anything. I've always tried, like even as a little girl, I like tried to become emotionally attached to like a stuffed animal, and I never cared. So I don't collect things.
Yeah, neither do I.
Maybe
No.
olive oil.
Books and movies. I'm sort of a hoarder. I'll never get rid of my DVD collection.
Do you own any movie or TV show props?
Yeah, I own something from this show. There's a well, I don't want to spoil it in episode 5, but there's a
This is how I'm going to get my spoil. I don't know.
you
Kidding.
know what? Whatever. I don't think it spoils anything. There is a scene in Matt's classroom, and our wonderful set decorator and production design team created this runner of all these classic books. Like it's like ticker tape that lines the walls, and I just loved it. And they gave it to me. So I haven't put it up
Did
yet.
you borrow it or they gave it to you?
They gave it to me. They said they could. They were confident enough they could. They could print things on paper again. That they felt that they could give it to me.
No.
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 I have an ashtray from Martha, Marcy, May, Marlene that Sean Durkin gave me when we wrapped, and it's a little sailboat, glass sailboat.
I have a like the backing for my seat from a unicorn store that I always really loved because it was really sparkly and glittery. Yeah.
What TV show have you watched all the way through more than once?
I'm going through Game of Thrones for the second time right now. I'm on season 7. Thank you.
Also known as my favorite show on TV, like everybody else.
Oh, I've probably seen Cowboy Bebop.
Oh, you're an
50
anime
times.
fan.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Oh, yeah, big fan.
I'm putting this together now.
Yeah. Cowboy Bebop is the best show that's ever existed, FYI, and seen it maybe 7 times at least.
Seen Freaks and Geeks like 4 or 5 times.
Oh wow.
That DVD collection.
I watched a lot of Nick at Night as a kid, so I feel like I've seen every episode of Green Acres like 5 times.
I need to do a follow-up on anime with this guy right here. So you've seen Robotech then?
I haven't, Stephen.
Really?
I have not.
You should watch the Macross saga from back in the 80s.
Oh, I've heard that's amazing.
It is.
Yeah, I've never seen it.
See, he's going to watch something. It's anime. You
There
might
is.
like it.
Yeah, I'm familiar. I just never saw it.
Right. What's the background photo on your phone?
It's well, I don't have it. It's like an oil painning of Joaquin Phoenix and her.
That's
Why are you embarrassed?
Weird.
Don't look at me.
Straight,
I
sir.
have
Be
another
proud.
man who I
It's
don't
an oil.
know.
It's kind of vaguely him. But I love that movie.
Yeah, no, the movie's phenomenal. It really is.
My best friend's little sister's an artist, and it's like an ink on plastic, weird black, white, gray kind of depressing image that I really love and is calming.
My kids pretending to be cats.
Oh,
Oh my God.
I got to be honest, I am shocked it's not Barry. Like,
My kids are getting deleted right after this.
Bill
One Bill Hader.
Bill Hader, center frame, you know.
It's the factory setting. I'm so embarrassed. It's just I never put a background photo up. You don't like stuffed animals. Don't laugh at me.
Put that into every interview.
Have you seen a movie more? Which movie have you seen more than 20 times?
Oh my gosh.
Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, we have the same answer.
It's the same person.
It's basically.
First Wives Club, Annie Hall, Star Wars.
Okay.
That's a weird person. Just realized.
So strange.
I love Diane Keaton. I wish you were in Star Wars.
Can you imagine La-di-da. It's in Tatooine.
Wait, how many times did you see Ernest Scared Stupid, though?
Could have been 20 times.
I don't know. I mean, safely 20, probably Lion King.
Okay.
Yeah. Beauty and the Beast. Beauty and the Beast. Sorry. That's the one.
I mean, anything that involves animation.
Yeah.
Right. I'm a big, and it doesn't matter. I'm gonna stop there because you guys got to go to your next interview. But I really mean it when I say congratulations on the show and especially being part of TIFF. You know, it's an amazing. Again, thank you to House of Aurora for having us, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.